On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791 from the Buck and Honey's remote studios, I welcome Lesley Gabel, an invasive ductal carcinoma breast cancer survivor who received drastic news in August 2012. A wife and mother of three, Lesley turned to her family for courage and strength in her battle with cancer. She talks about the ways to cope that helped her through this difficult time: professional support, preventative health, exercise, passions for stress relief, and a healthy work-life balance. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up wherever you are, whatever you are doing? I hope you are having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios, just south of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. As you can see back here, we are on the Potomac River, just off the Potomac River. You can follow the podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at tdecora8791, as well as hitting me up on Facebook at Tim Decora. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button or like button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning, featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, divorce, success despite challenges, etc., etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. According to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Lesley?
Mostly.
Mostly. In my house, the internet is not always right. My wife is always right.
Same here, by the way.
Breast cancer is the most common diagnosed among women in the U.S. Each year, about 30% of all newly diagnosed cancers in women are breast cancer. So, unfortunately, it happens. Today, I welcome Lesley Gabel to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. A resident of the great state of New Jersey, Lesley is a proud alum of Smithtown West High School, where she was a pioneer in the equality of women's sports. After high school, she would take her talents to Hofstra University, earning a marketing degree. After graduation, Lesley would join corporate America before entering the coalition work that has spanned more than 3 decades. She has demonstrated effective leadership through her adept tactical and strategic management of community-based coalitions, aiming to enhance the perception of harm and reduce substance use. Currently, she is the executive director at One Voice of Hunterdon County, New Jersey. Additionally, she provides consulting services through her LLC, LG Consulting. I'm so glad you could join us today. Lesley Gabel, what is up?
Oh, thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is so cool.
Thank
you. You were just on vacation.
Yeah.
And you're still glowing.
Well, thank you. Like I told my husband, I think I was meant for the tropical life. Definitely not this northeast gloomy weather, but it was certainly a wonderful time.
Any other cool vacations planned? And if so, where to?
Well, if you ask my husband, we're going to Italy. But if you ask me, I'd like to be saying we're going to Greece. So therefore, right now, we're not going either places. But I think probably next year we'll be doing that. So we're celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary this year. So we look really forward to time with our kids.
You were recently inducted into your hometown's Athletic Hall of Fame, Smithtown West High School. What sports did you play?
In high school, I was lucky to play soccer and basketball.
That's a pretty good combination.
Well, I would just say the basketball was really in the off season to help keep me in shape for the soccer season. But soccer really was my main passion and has always been.
Yeah. And back then it was you played soccer or you played basketball in the winter and then it was done. There was no traveling to all over God's country, the AAU circuit, travel circuit. And then likewise for soccer, like it is now, you just played during the spring and then it was over and you became a kid kind of?
Actually, no. I will tell you, back in the 80s when I did play soccer then, I played for the Smithtown, had its very first girls travel program. So I was fortunate to be on that. And we played all year round, indoor soccer. That was actually a lot of fun, playing off the walls and such. But we did start, that was really the start of the travel program that we saw in soccer, not like it is today, but played in a lot of tournaments, traveled really up and down the East Coast playing in tournaments in the summer, but I loved it.
Because I can't wait to get to your story about your breast cancer diagnosis and surviving that and thriving. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, are a place that people can escape from. For me, it's a great escape from cooking dinner. With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb, which are suburbs of our great capital city, Madison, Wisconsin. Most communities in the Dane County area can get to Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes. And I always ask, have you been to Buck and Honey's? You will be once we get you to Madison.
I would like to try.
All right, on the broadcast, our guests will follow the format for sharing their story as what was it like, what happened, and what is it like now. So we will cover what was it like and what happened in segment 1. And then segment 2, we will cover the what is it like now and your suggestions for thriving in segment 2. Segment 1, what was it like before and what happened? Tell us about your family growing up. Were you big family, small family, in between?
Well, you know what, my mom and dad and my brother and I immigrated to the States when I was just a baby. My parents and all my family are from England, but my parents immigrated to the States. And, you know, it was just us. I had another brother born in the United States, so us 5. Really throughout my entire, childhood, it was us 5 in the United States. So a small but close-knit family, and was fortunate to be able to see family in England on a regular basis. But it was really us strong, mighty 5.
I know you mentioned this in the conference that your session, and you said that both your parents have a strong English accent, and here you can be a chameleon. If you're in Washington, D.C., you can talk governmental voice. If you're in Tennessee, you can talk Tennessean. So I thought that was kind of cool. You got any Tennessee voice right now that you can throw at us?
It was more than just the southern y'alls, right? And when I'm talking to people, I'll switch between calling people you guys to y'all, because my childhood was in the South.
Oh.
But then as a young adult, I lived out west. I traveled with my job and moved through a lot of different cities. So I've been very fortunate to be in a lot of places. But typically when I'm playing soccer, you'll hear it's a corner. You'll hear my New York accents come out. But
oh, yeah.
I didn't realize how strong my parents' accents were until I got older, and other people would be like, "Oh, your parents, they sound so cool when they're talking." And I'm like, "Really?" You just don't realize it as a kid growing up.
I know when I've traveled, and I've certainly heard some of my students when they've gone to school visits down south, and I said, "How many times did people ask you hey, can you say that again?"
Yeah.
People in the South think that the Midwesterners have this really cool accent. So I enjoy when I'm down there. Smithtown High School alum, a proud Bull. What sports did you play? You talked about basketball and soccer already. Let's go with which one was the favorite.
Oh, hands down soccer.
Hands down soccer.
Yeah. My dad, actually, how I started playing, I have 2 brothers, and I'll just say I tried the dancing route as younger, and I didn't do very well. My dad said to my mother, you know what, we're going to put her in sports. And my brother is just 15 months younger than me, so my dad just had me play with all the sports with my younger brother. So he coached both of us. So that's kind of how it started. But obviously my dad, born and raised in England, soccer was really the foundation there, as everybody plays. Girls really weren't playing soccer at that time. But my dad said, you know what, I'm going to just have you play with your brother. And so that's how I started intramurals in a YMCA program. And I just loved it. I just enjoyed everything about it. But I also grew up in the backyard with my older brother. He's a goalkeeper. And my brother and I, we were the backyard that had, my dad constructed a soccer net. And so that's how, I just only knew playing that. And I loved it. It was everything. And I was able to enjoy that with my brothers as well.
I was just going to mention that your dad or your parents both being from England football is
Football.
huge,
Oh, yeah.
huge
Yeah.
over there. So that makes a lot of sense. It's amazing that you didn't pick up the dancing, because the soccer is so really good for the footwork, which probably made you a pretty decent basketball player as well.
Not bad. I was a little bit more I think sometimes a little bit too aggressive playing the basketball, like I was still playing on the soccer field.
Which comes from the soccer stuff.
Which plays, yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, soccer is and will always be my my passion for certain.
Okay, you're proud Hofstra University. I had in here Lion and Lioness, and then you said they're now Pride. But back when you went to school, they were called the Flying Dutchman.
The Flying Dutchman, that's correct.
We talked a little off air, but interesting story. And I think there's a message that you can send to some of maybe our young listeners. So why Hofstra?
Well, at the time I was graduating high school, women's sports, especially soccer, was just starting at the collegiate level. And there really were not any sports scholarships. Academically, I was just an okay student. So I wasn't really going to be thriving to get a scholarship academically, which as hard as I worked, school just wasn't necessarily my thing, I'll say. And my dad at the time was the chairman of the geology department at Hofstra, and I could go to Hofstra University free tuition. And so really it was my parents at the time said to me, you have a choice here. You either find a school where you want to play soccer and get a scholarship, or you go to Hofstra. So it was very difficult. I can tell you, I was I was sad. I didn't want to go to Hofstra by any means. My brothers went to Hofstra. They were able to play soccer there. At the time, though, they did have intramural sports that I could play soccer there. And I was fortunate I could still play at a competitive level for the soccer at the New York State level team in the summer, in one of the summer months. So that was the journey that I ended up taking, because, like I mentioned, academically, I wasn't going to get a full scholarship someplace to play soccer. So it was, I can tell you, very difficult as a young person, as a teenager, just wanting to play soccer. But as an adult with children that have gone through college and the expense of that, I truly now know what a gift it was that I was able to go to school and get a great education without having the burden of tuition.
As you're talking, it's 37 or 38 years ago that you chose to make that.
Yes.
I was going to interject in there, but I was just caught off guard a little bit by you still have a passion for maybe that choice. And I was going to throw out, you were torn between maybe accepting a little bit of money to go and follow a dream that's only going to last
a few more years.
It's not like you maybe were going to go over on the other side of the pond and play professionally.
Well, they didn't have it. There was no professional women's soccer programs
anywhere, even over there.
No, I mean, there was none of that. It was all still developing at the time. And there was a lot of choices to be made, but a lot was also happening personally in my family at the time. My brother had a serious accident, so I didn't really want to be too far from home either. So it was quite difficult at that point in my life, but the decisions you make and the path you take, I think, bring you on a journey. And reflecting back, like I said, I was so fortunate.
And you made the right move based upon your growing up, because you talked about that family bond. There was just the five of you that were really tight, and it's probably a no-brainer, but you had to go through some of those thought processes to make the correct decision. Well,
I will tell you, my brothers ended up one semester, just because of their age difference. They were roommates, and I lived down the hall from them at Hofstra. So
you were tight.
Yeah, I guess we were. And again, when you're going through that, you don't really see it that way. It's not until you're really an older adult looking back that you see it the way that it is and was, right? So it's pretty neat to be able to say that now as an adult.
So after you graduate from Hofstra, a proud Flying Dutchman.
Yes, now Pride.
Now Pride. You enter corporate America. So tell our listeners what corporate America
Mhm.
is like. Sometimes I don't even know, but you're going to let us know right now.
I mean, I want to actually also pause and tell you something about this and how I was very fortunate to get a job as part of a college recruitment program.
Oh, yeah.
I was absolutely a C student in school.
C's get degrees.
Yes, C's do, they do, and I was fortunate for that. But the reason I mention this, and I really would like the listeners to know, for those students that may struggle in school and may think, well, I'm not the A student or the B student to even go for opportunities. But luckily, my father pushed me and said, hey, you will go to some of these recruitment opportunities. You don't. And again, still at that time, I listened to everything my dad told me.
And we were raised in that.
Yes.
Why? Because
my father told me so, right? So I did, and I was able to get hired for a very good job in career development from an electronics company as a quality associate at that time. And the reason that I asked, like, why would you hire me? I was like the C student. And what they said is like, well, you went to school and graduated in 4 years, you held a job down, and you played sports throughout that entire time. So you could multitask and still be successful on the other side. And I share that so folks can realize that there's lots of opportunities and there's other wins than just necessarily academic grades. And those were the things that got me hired. And I ended up traveling and working all over the United States and moved into a quality manager role that ended up translating really well for the second part of my career life, which is in coalition work. So corporate America gave me lots of training and travel opportunities and lots of good lessons learned. So,
and also gave you a lot of good accents as well.
Yes.
You picked up those accents.
Moving all over. But it also gave me, but you know what soccer gave me? Soccer gave me the ability of all the places I got transferred to into towns, how I adapted and met friends in these new cities and places I lived was I picked up and played soccer. And some of the people I've met through that are lifelong friends. And again, that journey was all through my ability to go, hey, I don't know anybody in this town. Do they have a soccer program? And that's really has carried me through.
And you had that common bond of competing and playing sports, and then all the other things that go along with that afterward of just getting together with people.
Yeah.
I think I'm cut from the same cloth your dad was. It's just I didn't want my kids just to go to school and college just to be college students. If you do that, you better get close to a 4.0 because you should be then going to the library. But yeah, they did a few other things and separated themselves from the 3.5s or 3.8s that they got in college. And so they were marketable, just like you were. Corporate America leads you then into that coalition and substance prevention work that you have been in for a long time. Was there a reason for that?
Well, initially, not really. And I'll tell you how it happened. I had taken a little bit of time off of working professionally after my third child was born. And as knowing that, having 3 children, that I probably need to get back in the workforce and thinking about their future, especially with college, that my husband and I knew that was going to be something that we were going to want to help save for. And there was a part-time position available at the time for a prevention educator. And since I'd already done a lot of presentations, I thought that can't be a really hard job. I was really wrong. And I think I've shared with you before, I was on a flip chart in a 4th grade class and asked students what substances that were they aware of. And someone raised their hand and said ketamine. I didn't even know how to spell ketamine. I didn't even know what it was. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I'm right for this. And so it started just as a job. And then, unfortunately, I started to meet families that had lost their children to overdoses. And this journey and path now has been totally something different, of really creating an environment and places and spaces for prevention, but also a space for people to get well.
Yeah, I really love the work that you're doing, and as much as or as little as I've known you, probably 4 or 5 months now, you just exude that you care, and then you're an advocate for maybe people that don't have a voice, and then you also are in that education part where you want to teach them how to live life better, and then you also you're in a role to help us coalition leaders do the boots on the ground work, and you're also trying to provide us with the financial grant money behind that to do that work. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
In 2012, you are diagnosed with ductile invasive carcinoma breast cancer. What were your initial thoughts with that?
Well, I had gone through several months of testing because I had several things going on that were really kind of a mess from a medical standpoint. Mm-hmm. And each one of them, as I was going through for several months, it was okay. Everything was going to be okay. And then the very last one, when it wasn't, I'm a very mostly logical individual, and it just didn't line up to me. I was actually in, this can't really be, like I'm sure most people would expect, shock. But I really thought they had it wrong, because it can't be that someone, at the time, it was just after my 40s, I just had turned 46, at a younger family, and I thought, this isn't happening. So I really wasn't addressing it at those moments. I addressed everything factually, and I had to make sure that they had it wrong. And I was going to prove it wasn't really true.
Yeah, when you sent me your bio, and as I was looking through it, it's amazing how the number of people that get some kind of diagnosis, cancer or whatever, in that area. You're an active person. Mm-hmm. You enjoy playing golf, watching soccer, savoring moments by the beach, cherishing time with your family and your beloved dogs. And you're right. This is not supposed to happen to somebody who takes care of themselves. But here you are faced with this shock of, well, you have breast cancer. Mm-hmm. During that next hour, week, a day, week, how did you get through that initial first shock?
Well, one thing that I don't think I have mentioned to you is that 2 weeks prior to my diagnosis, my son was diagnosed with a chronic illness, lifelong illness. And so I was in a bit of turmoil. But I will say, watching how he handled himself as a 16-year-old diagnosed with something that was going to take apart his love of playing sports, he was the one that I really saw such great strength.
Sometimes we can turn to our own kids.
Yeah, incredible strength. And but I will say, in the beginning, I really didn't manage it well. I internalized everything because I also wanted to be strong for my son, for my family, and I was in the middle of a thriving career. I didn't, I had to, people were looking for me for strength, so I internalized everything.
Who really, I've asked this to a number of the guests, who really knows how to act in those situations? But because of this podcast, I'm finding out that you can share things that are going to help somebody that has no direction. They don't know how to ask for help, but somebody can say, hey, you need to listen to episode number 40. This Lesley Gabel had this happen with her son, and that had this happen, and here's what she did to get through those moments. So you're giving people, the listeners, an opportunity to take care of themselves through your words. Yeah. And that's a whole nother advocacy that maybe you don't know about yet.
Well, I'm going to tell you some of the things that right away that now I share with others that are diagnosed is not to internalize, is that the more that you do speak about it, because sometimes if you start speaking about it, then it becomes real. And that, I think, frightens people. And when someone's talking to you about life expectancy that you have, it doesn't sound real to you. But one of the greatest things that I have learned is that sometimes talking to people, even if you don't know them well, and they've offered that ear or to share their experience, take it. Because I learned so much when I finally did do that. And listening to other people's journey, it didn't become as scary anymore. And listening to other people that were able to thrive and go through some of the hardest times of their lives, and understanding what helped them. And everyone's going to do things a little bit different, and that's certainly understandable. But I think being able to accept the help, because I was the one that was always going to take care of everyone. I was the one that I can take care of and do everything. I'm a very independent individual. And then this put me I was now very vulnerable. And I had to now start leaning on other people. And I would say that there's always, even if someone doesn't have a close-knit family or someone in their lives, that there are many people, strangers, that become very close supporters for you.
Strong and don't suppress is what I just got from that share as I was listening and trying to put together, what can I take from this that I can also share from you, and be strong. You need to still be strong. Yeah. But then you also have to don't suppress things. Let people know, whether that's in your circle of your tight circle of family, or a trusted friend or a colleague, or maybe it's a counselor.
It could be also, when I find out people are diagnosed, could be through a friend. If a friend might have it, I always give them my phone number and say, I know I'm a stranger to you, but we now share there's something common we have in common. And when you talk to somebody that has cancer, whether it's a similar cancer to yours or not, you immediately have a relationship in a way that you can speak to one another, that only those that have gone through it can truly understand that mindset.
Yeah, it's in that recovery world where we start to find people that have traveled the path before us and can tell you or tell us what it's like, and what's going to happen on that journey, and at the end, what's at the end, and that's recovery and living a better life.
Yeah.
Buck and Honey's has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning, with 4 locations in the Madison area. One is always near. People ask why Buck and Honey's. Owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their employee assistance program, but Buck and Honey's does. On August 31st, 2012, a day after your 46th birthday, Lesley Gabel was diagnosed with breast cancer. You'll find out in segment 2 how she survived and thrived. Please stay tuned. Don't change that channel. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We will be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365, and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim Decora. The podcast is where I feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. Today, we have Lesley Gabel in the Buck and Honey's remote studios, and she is sharing her journey with a breast cancer diagnosis. After the initial, you're past that initial shock of your primary care physician coming in and saying, Lesley, you have cancer, breast cancer. Got to do a few more screenings, a few more, get you under the microscope a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Did your thoughts change? You were initially, you were shocked. This is not supposed to happen to me. Those next hours, days, weeks, did your thoughts change at all?
My thoughts changed significantly once I faced it. Right, once I had that second diagnosis of had to go into the Sloan Kettering in Manhattan, and it was really at that point that I realized that this was really happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the harder navigations is knowing which treatment options should you go. And they had the American Cancer Society recommendations. Sloan Kettering had one. My breast surgeon and oncologist that I was given. So everybody has different opinions about, but some of them do line up, and then choosing what's right for you as an individual. So that's kind of really the area that I faced, and there's really just two pathways of which way I was going to go. Mm-hmm. And so I took a more aggressive one. It was more aggressive in a long term, I thought would have better outcomes than a short term, which would have been less invasive. But again, there wasn't and what I've come across with this is that everybody's got a different path and journey, and that's okay.
Yeah, my sister-in-law had gotten a breast cancer diagnosis, and she's a little over 10-year survivor. And the one thing we learned about my wife's diagnosis of cancer, bladder cancer, was we did that initial shock, how the heck is this happening to me? And then did some, so to speak, grieving, anger, crying. And because of my sister-in-law's path and journey, we said, okay, now what do we do? What's the next?
What are the best options?
What are the next best options? And let's get to work with this. Yep. Let's roll up our sleeves. So what did that treatment plan look like? Because in my mind, when I think of cancer now, I'm a little more educated. I'm thinking of radiation. I'm thinking of chemotherapy. I'm also thinking of immunotherapy. Mm-hmm. What did your treatment plan look like?
Well, again, the journey and the direction I chose, which was different than the initial direction, but I thought I wanted to look really in the furthest path down, because when they're talking life expectancy with you and percentages, and it can get very complicated. But I think making that choice for you as an individual of how you want to handle your own body is crucial. So the path and journey I chose was to have a double mastectomy. And so with that, though, it would limit radiation, it would limit having chemotherapy. So that is kind of my choice of why I chose that.
And that would be that if somebody were thinking about terms of aggressiveness, mm-hmm. that is the most aggressive approach.
Well, at the time, remember, every year there's new recommendations, but I was having multiple other conditions going on that were not cancerous at the time. And I decided that I didn't want, to be with all these chemicals in me. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to be in the same situation again with a secondary breast cancer diagnosis. But I want to be very clear that both paths share the same type of percentage for being able to address the cancer I had. So there wasn't one that was going to give you a better percentage than the other. But I decided to do the surgery for me personally because I did not want to have to go through whether a lumpectomy and radiation again and reconstruction of what that looked like. And I decided that I was going to go this a bit more of aggressive and do the double mastectomy, which put me on a longer path in recovery than the other path I would have had. But I felt at the time for me, and again, personal choice of how you decide to go on these paths is working with your medical team and making sure you have the medical providers that you feel very comfortable with. And my breast surgeon in particular, she saved my life because the tumor I had was benign, but she decided right at the very end to go around the tumor and take some random samples, and that's where they found the cancer. And had she not done that, the cancer it was a very invasive cancer and would have spread. And so I was very fortunate. And I look at her as my angel because she says, Lesley, it was like a needle in a haystack. But I still feel very fortunate for her talent.
We'll have to get her name somewhere. Doctor, who's that doctor?
Well, she's actually now semi-retired. So,
okay.
Yeah. But her name, by the way, was Dr. Gleason, and she is just phenomenal.
Big shout out to Dr. Gleason.
Yes.
Some primary physicians might say, okay, here's what the physical stuff you got to go through, but we also think you need to go through some mental help as well.
Yeah, I would say my breast surgeon offered me medications to help because honestly, sleeping at nights, especially when you're going through the type of cancer I had, they were doing lymph node testing first, which was painful. They were doing other types of things ahead of some of the surgeries I was having. So I had pain, now, and knowing, what we do in prevention, knowing some of these medications they were giving me were going to be very addictive and strong. I was fortunate where I worked that there was a counselor there that I felt very connected to. Mm-hmm. And because some days I would feel like I'm fine, next days I would just start crying uncontrollably. So I obviously wasn't addressing. So I threw myself into working, but it was at nighttime when I closed my eyes that I couldn't sleep because then the realities were really facing me of what was happening. And so luckily I had a counselor I felt connected with where I worked, and I would go in and talk with him. And what I realized is that it wasn't just dealing with my own emotions, but it was all the people that cared for me in my life were also dealing with it. And I was really laser focused on my own emotions and not realizing the other people it was also impacting. So the counselor really helped me see that, and how everybody responds to your diagnosis is not going to necessarily appear in the way that you would expect it.
That's that ripple effect of what happens and what we go through personally has an effect on more than maybe even just our immediate family. It goes on further to coworkers and neighbors, and yeah, I never thought of their responses and how do you react to that to keep yourself mentally well. So besides your family, we forgot to talk about your own family. I mean, we've talked about your one son, but let's talk about how they fit into that puzzle of mental health and physical health and your well-being.
Well, I think as a mom, and I know speaking to all the moms out there, you want to take care and shield your children as much as you can. But I knew I wasn't going to be able to because I was going to be going through a lot of physical surgeries. So it wasn't like something I could hide from them. So, my husband and I, really wanted to make sure that our kids were taken care of and making sure that they knew what was happening in an age-appropriate way, because my daughter was younger at the time. But I also found that my kids were so resilient. They're much more resilient than we give them credit for. And my children, and they still are my greatest joy.
Yeah, I know I'm going to allude to this later on, but I sometimes think that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree because of they're strong because you're strong. And they're resilient, I think, because you've role modeled that as well as maybe as
I always get emotional when I talk about them, but I will say tears of joy. Tears of joy.
Yeah,
sure.
And they, at some point, they'll probably figure out that they helped save your life.
Well, I'll share this with you, that one of my kids' college essays But I thought that was going to be about, their resiliency. Wrote about mine. And boy, talked about having a crying fest. But proud, so proud. But I have to say, because my husband, still to this day, my rock.
Your rock, your best friend, your roommate, your homie,
Yeah.
your partner in crime. Hopefully there's no crimes going on, but your partner in crime, your travel buddy.
Yeah.
We need those people in our lives, and they play a huge, huge role. Cry, laugh, and think. And Lesley, you've kind of covered all of those so far.
Yeah.
I didn't know if we could break that tough exteriors, but I'm so glad I've gotten to see that today.
But I'm going to tell you this, for all the people that feel like they have to be really strong all the time, because I always have people say to me, oh my gosh, you're so strong. You're like such a strong person. And, oh, I wish I could be strong. And I always tell people, I still hurt the same way inside as anybody else would. So people who have this tougher or stronger exterior doesn't mean that they don't have feelings. They just display it in different ways and at different times. But we still hurt and feel the same way as anyone else.
Wow, that sheds a light on, I'm still learning, and I'm going to soon be 56 years old, and I learn something new every day, and thanks for sharing that. You shared 5 suggestions that have allowed you to survive and thrive with breast cancer. And I also want to shed the light as well. You were thriving before the breast cancer in corporate America and coalition work, but then you hit a little speed bump in the road and you had to survive that initial diagnosis in 2012. And you got through that, and you're surviving with a very successful consulting business. You're speaking and doing these speaking engagements and helping so many more people in the world. And now you're helping people who get diagnosed with cancer. Here's what you shared with us as your 5 things. And I'm going to toss these in underhand like softball, and you're going to go ahead and hit them over the fence. You talked about getting counseling and professional help. We'll start with that. I'm going to toss it in. Go ahead and hit that.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that there's no shame in recognizing the help that you need. That professional counselors are there to help you, and making sure that you get help from the neck up is so critical. So many people don't ever consider that, and they just are looking at their physical health and not their mental well-being. And in order really to be successful in any journey that you are on, I think it shows incredible strength to reach out and get mental health support.
Number 2, preventative health care and proper screenings.
Saved my life.
Saved your life.
Saved my life, because as soon as something appeared, within 24 hours, I was in the doctor's office. And I think had I not had a good, other baselines to be able to compare what was happening, that would have also delayed even trying to figure out what was going on at that present time. But listen, no one likes to go for a colonoscopy screen, and I'm going to just put that out there. You do it.
I don't.
All right.
But I've done it twice.
Okay. Right. I don't know anyone that does. But all these screenings are meant, and I instill it into my 3 kids, that preventative health is the key to keeping you on a very strong and healthy journey. And there's screenings that are meant, and even if they're uncomfortable to do it, they're just short moments in time that can help. And if something is wrong, then you're able to address it.
Number 3, you were physically active, playing golf and doing some other things. But since the diagnosis, you've increased your physical activity.
More so even just in more recent years. And I will say in this past year especially, as the older I got, because for a while I still wasn't really taking care of myself. So let me also just put it out there. I was active, but not really taking care of my physical health in the way of, as far as weight management and healthy eating and exercising properly. And the older I got, the more that I realized that I was given, I feel very blessed with being able to address my cancer. And so I will tell you, taking care of your physical health, your mental health, but also, especially as we get older, and I have to say, as I age, is finding ways to do that in ways that will work for you. It's critical.
Number 4, find some passions for ways to relieve stress.
Significant in a healthy way. Just like anybody else, I found unhealthy ways, not healthy ways. And that was, in the end, just makes you feel worse. So over a year ago, I finally said, I've got to find a better way from doing this. And that's why I really try. So I found a way to start doing that. But relieving stress, whether it's, and I have to tell you, I'm not very good at taking those deep breaths or doing the yoga because my mind's always racing. But what I found is learning how to do that. And if I didn't have any of those skill sets through my surgeries when pain was really at high levels, I found that that was some of the best things that I can ever give anybody advice, is truly learning how to take those deep pauses, mental pauses, physical pauses through all the breath work. I'm still trying to get better at it.
And number 5, and I think this is very important for people to hear, ensuring a work and life balance. I know when I was younger, I would wear that badge of honor that, I'm working on 4 hours of sleep. And somebody told me that you're impaired now with 4 hours of sleep. That is not a badge of honor. Wearing the badge of honor, I got 8 to 9 hours of sleep last night, and I'm going to say, you're ready to go. I'm picking you first versus that other person.
Yeah.
Go ahead and hit that.
Well, and this work-life balance, sometimes people think, oh, well, they're so great. They work 13 hours today. Well, but I'm going to come back what I've learned, and I used to be that person, by the way. Let me just fit one more thing in the day, is quality over quantity. Is that I might have to tell someone, I'm sorry, I can't do that today. I will be able to do that at this point in time because my quality of work is going to improve, because I'm going to be able to be better at understanding that there's more to our lives than just the work that we do. The work doesn't define who we are. They're just part of who we are. Because if we attach our work to just that, when that goes away, it's incredibly difficult to manage where you are and the happiness and the journey of your life. And so that balance in ensuring that you spend and give the time to all those that need it, but even that could be just for yourself. And I'm telling you, I'm going to say this to all the listeners, there's times I feel guilty. Oh, maybe I should have worked a little bit longer or done this for somebody. I'm taking a little bit of time for myself, and it is a process to not feel guilty for doing that, because it's hard. It's hard, but it's important to do so, because I think it improves your mental health and improves your ability to be happy.
What an episode. I'm so glad you could join us today. Your story of going through breast cancer diagnosis after a son's diagnosis and sharing how you got through the initial shock the next couple of days is a story and really kind of a treatment plan that worked for you. But I think some of our listeners who get this same diagnosis can refer back to this episode and say, I'm going to try what Lesley did, because I don't know. And she's gone down that path already. You shared parts of the story that we can all learn from. Lesley, call to action. Lesley Gabel just shared an amazing story in her experience as a breast cancer survivor. She also shared her 5 suggestions that helped her to get through a physically and mentally challenging diagnosis. Here are Lesley's suggestions. Get some counseling and professional help. Make sure you do the preventative health care, things such as screenings and mammograms and
Absolutely.
colonoscopies. Number 3, she in fact increased her physical activity from what it was like when she was maybe a little bit younger and could do more things. She's doing, in effect, more things. Number 4, passions for ways to relieve stress. And number 5 is ensuring a work and life balance. As we close with another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, are there any final thoughts, Lesley?
My final thoughts that I would like to share is that please accept the help when people offer it for you. I was not doing that initially, and I'm still to this day so blessed to all the friends and family members that are still in my corner today, still supporting me, still lifting me up, and really recognize that through the lens of gratitude and trying to give back in the places and spaces that you can. And so in the work that we do in substance use prevention is really, especially at the times we're all living in now, that we can have some passion for those that struggle and understand that while sometimes where people might look at this as a choice, they're on a path that needs support and help, and not shame and stigmatizing towards those that we all need to help. And we need to do that without judgment. And so if we can do that in the communities, is when people are experiencing, whether it's mental health challenges, substance use challenges, that we find a way without judgment to find how can we help them. Lastly, is that we need to put more emphasis with our children in prevention and finding a ways that we can bring back the time when we can be all just a little bit more kinder to one another.
Makes me think of that sign I see all the time. And I don't know if they have it out on the East Coast, but I see it in the Midwest a lot. Be kind.
Yeah, very, very short, 2 simple words. But when we can consider that all of us are on this journey together, and it might sound so cliche, but we are, and that the more that we can take a pause and recognize we never know what somebody else is going through, and just to pause for a moment, not to immediately have a knee-jerk reaction to think or judge them, because we just don't know. I know this from doing all these prevention talks. Every time I'm in no matter where I am speaking, someone comes up to me and shares that they've just lost someone to a substance overdose, whether it was their child, their brother, their sister, their mother, and you just never know what somebody else is going through.
Such a strong woman with so much health and prevention and awareness work that you do. I am so glad that we have finally got an opportunity to really cross paths. And then now during this week, we had an opportunity to sit down and talk, and I have learned more about you, and our listeners are going to know who Lesley Gabel is for eternity.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, you got a digital footprint.
Well, thank you.
Our next episode, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they survived and thrived. If you have a story to share or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.